Okay, thanks everybody. I'm your first presenter today. My name is Martin, and I'm going to talk about 3D materials today. So don't be afraid. Don't leave right now. It's a technical topic, but I try to make it very visual and easy to understand. I just quickly wanted to start off the speech by talking about a little anecdote from when I grew up. So I grew up around the time when the internet was slowly having its rise, so the late 90s, the early 2000s. And I also vividly remember at that time that you could just about start to purchase clothing online. So that was slowly when it started. And everybody at that point was saying, I'm not sure if it's staying. Should we really do that? Do people really want to buy clothing online? Retail stores are never going to go away because people want to touch everything and people want to try on the clothing. But see how we are 20 years later. These are stats from the US, but I think they're more or less applicable here as well. We have a 50% share in e-commerce versus retail store sales in apparel. So just in this 20-year time span, after everybody said like, or most people said like, oh, this is not gonna work out. But I'm not gonna talk about apparel e-com sales specifically today. All is about fabrics. I'm just bringing this analogy because I think we are seeing something very similar here for the world of textile sales and fabrics. It's just starting, but who knows where we are in 10 or 20 years. So there's already, because you can already see examples. We have the 3D forum of the performance days where you can download digital files. There's Polartec, for example, who offers their clients digital files for downloads. So it's already there. The question is just how fast everything will scale. Already talked a little bit about myself. My name is Martin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the material digitization company Vizoo. We are located in Haar, which is like a 15-minute walk from here, so it was very convenient getting here. We provide solutions for material digitization. Our founding story is actually quite interesting. So you probably heard of the big sportswear brand Adidas. They're located in Herzogenaurach, German brand, and they've sort of been always a pioneer for 3D design, 3D digital product creation, already starting in 2005. And with always the goal in mind to reduce the number of physical samples, to reduce cost, to increase efficiency, and to reduce design cycles. And so, like I said, it started in 2005. It went very well. And in order to facilitate digital product creation, there's one key building block that is needed, and that is digital materials. So in 2010, I was working there together with a colleague and together with a team, and our main responsibility was the digitization of materials. At that point in time, there wasn't really any industrial solution. There wasn't really any mass-ready solution. It was all very manual. It was a lot of work. The quality wasn't so good. It wasn't consistent, and you really needed like experts in order to do this. So we and also Adidas realized very quickly, hey, this is not a scalable process that we're having here. And it's like one of the foundational building blocks that we have for our digital product creation process. So in a project in 2011, we looked into how can we make this more easier, faster, more efficient, more approachable for everybody, basically. And this is where the idea for the first prototype of our current product was created. It couldn't name itself a product yet. It was just like, a work in progress, I would say. But it worked well enough for Adidas that they already, that for them the project was finished successfully, and they started using that prototype for digitizing the materials. And that project was basically done. But we saw like, so me and my co-founding partner at that time, he's unfortunately not at the company anymore. We saw like a lot of potential for that. And frankly speaking, also we saw like that we had like that startup vibe going on. And we just wanted to develop it further because we just saw like, hey, this is a great idea. This is a great technology. And we should invest some time into creating a product out of it. So long story short, that was 2013. Roughly 10 years, 9 years later, we are 30 people. And most of the biggest brands in the industry are already utilizing our products to digitize materials. And what was very interesting for us to see, so we mainly focused on fashion brands initially. So big brands starting and then slowly going to middle-sized brands. And now since 2020, and I guess this was also due to the pandemic, unfortunately, I mean good for us, but unfortunately for everybody else, we see much more interest coming now from the supply chain side. So basically fabric suppliers, garment manufacturers, because due to the pandemic, we suddenly saw like a disruption in supply chains. People couldn't travel anymore. People couldn't attend fairs. People couldn't even ship samples sometimes. So everybody was suddenly looking for digital alternatives. But I talk a lot about the everything around it. So I just want to give you a quick glimpse about what a 3D material in fact is. Basically, the core how a 3D material is captured. So that's not all what everybody does, not only us, is to analyze its visual properties first. So what is the color, what is the reflectance, what is the structure, in order to then replicate that properly in a 3D application. You need like all this information extracted from your material. It needs to be made tileable. Once that is basically done, like once that process is done, it opens the world to a lot of different possibilities and applications for that material, some of which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail later. So, and if you did everything correctly, you basically end up with a digital twin of your materials, or a digital representation of a real fabric that can be used for a multitude of purposes. So, like I said, at the very center, we have our digital material. Once that process is finished, you can use it for, if you look at the fabric supplier, for design, for example, to create digital color variations, to create print previews. You can use it on the sales side, for example, in an online shop, like I showed later, previously, in a fabric fair, like the 3D forum from Performance Days, or in creating digital lookbooks. And of course, the same is true for the brand side. For design, again, you can do 3D design in order to reduce samples, in order to increase efficiency. You can do prototyping and sampling. And of course, if you look at the sales side, and this is already happening today as well, you can use it for e-commerce, you can use it for configurators. I mean, everybody has seen e-commerce images completely digital already, because they're so close to reality that you cannot even see the difference anymore. So I just want to stress right now, this is not a, this is the future. In 10 or 15 years time, we're gonna see that applied. This is already all happening now. So all these brands listed there already doing 3D in some capacity or other. All the brands you saw listed earlier use our products for 3D purposes. It might not always be throughout the whole value chain. It might just be for design, just be for selling, just be for e-commerce. But this is already there. So this is already the present, basically. And again, they're just using that. It saves them cost, it saves them time. And of course, it's just a lot more sustainable, because for every sample that you create digitally, you save one sample that had to be created and shipped around physically. So again, and to come back to the topic at hand, to facilitate this, it just requires digital materials in order to work. There we go. So you probably already heard about the famous words from Daniel Grieder, former CEO now of Tommy Hilfiger. They want to start doing everything, their whole 3D, their whole design digitally, because it gives them an edge that they're not dependent on any sample sendings around, any shipments. It's more sustainable, it's faster. You can create different produce without ever having to sew them, or without even having to have that fabric at hand. And of course, Tommy Hilfiger is not the only brand that does that and is striving to achieve that. So I wanted to stress one big advantage for fabric suppliers providing their 3D materials to their brand, because you give them, or if you're a fabric supplier, you give them an edge and you really support them in their workflow. And there's various ways of sharing 3D materials. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You don't need your own online material shop that caters to 3D files. You have people like Performance Days with the 3D forum. There's already 3D material platforms existing that just focus on connecting suppliers, connecting brands, and exchanging digital materials with each other. And last but not least, it can just be as easy as you have your booth here at the at Performance Days. Why not just give everybody a USB stick with your fabrics, but in a digital additional way on it, or just give them a QR code where they can download everything. So it does not always have to be rocket science. It can also be small steps to achieve that. And again, so this on the left-hand side, I like it very much. These are some examples from 3D Forum for Performance Days. You can watch them online. So, and some of the biggest advantages right now is on the one hand the technological advantage. If you're a fabric supplier and start doing that, you're less in a position where you then come late and at one point just get dictated by brands how to do that or what you need to do. Because we already see that push happening today. There's a lot of big brands driving their suppliers to send them digital files, and always the problem is it's then very fast. Implementation of new technology is just a very long process. So don't be too late for that. And maybe a small anecdote from one of our clients here too. We have a fabric supplier in Switzerland who proactively came to us and wanted to start digitizing fabrics. And now they are farther advanced than the brands. So they are basically advising now their brands on how to ideally use their fabrics, how to manage their fabrics. And they said like all the relationships suddenly became much better. And last but not least, like I said, the digital fabric is facilitating all these advantages for brands. And maybe not today, but in 5 years' time, they might also focus more on suppliers who are already digital ready, instead of suppliers who are just like in the physical realm right now. Another advantage is speed. Because right now, when you develop a new fabric as a fabric supplier, when are you showing that to your client? Do you check like, oh, when is the next fabric fair? Or when do we have time to cut it out and create the next lookbook and ship that around? You could just as well already send them a preview digitally. So basically, once you have the development ready, or even develop it together with your clients, you can share it instantly. And last but definitely not least, every fabric, every swatch, every sample that we don't have to send around reduces our carbon footprint, which is what is this all about? So like I said, I want to keep it very visual right now. If you're interested in any of the technical details, we have a booth at the very end. Feel free to stop by. So I'm mostly showing examples today. One of which is using digital lookbooks. So we've been talking to some clients, and they told us about some fabric supplier clients, and they told us about some of their expenses they have with just shipment cost of digital swatch books. And they can range up to 500,000 euros just the shipment cost seasonally to provide all their clients with a lookbook. And this is one of the things that can be easily done digital as well. And it's not always, it has to replace, so everything you see is completely digital. And it does not always have to be like black or white, so that you have to completely erase the physical world, nothing to touch anymore, it's all digital now. It can just be, hey, maybe we make our lookbook or swatch book like 50% smaller, just include every color variation or every material once, and just provide the color variation as a digital add-on with a QR code, just to save on the weight and save on the waste. Or have customers make like a pre-selection online and then just ship the swatches they actually need, and not just like ship all 500 swatches to brands and then they pick like one at the end of the day. So I think with the digitization here, and which is often overlooked because people like to focus on the negative aspects as well. But what's the big advantage is the increased reach. Because if you have a physical swatch book, how many brands can you send that to? I don't know, 1,000, 2,000, 500. It's all cost. It's all like an evaluation. You probably say like, oh, we only send you one swatch book. Please share that with your colleagues. More expensive. If I have a PDF, I just send this to everybody. I can send this to 1 million people. I can send this to all the designers of a fabric brand. They don't have to like share a single swatch book among their colleagues. It's just you suddenly have like a whole range of options with that. And again, you can still have the physical one on top of that. Maybe if they're interested, you send that afterwards. But we think that's a great step to start. And also, like I said, cost saving. I mean, how much are you currently, so if you're a fabric supplier, how much are you currently paying for swatch books? So for the samples, for the people who cut them out, for pages that need to be printed, for packaging, and then for shipment, and the worker salary on top of that. It's probably a lot. And just reducing that by 20%, 30% might already be a huge gain. So another super interesting topic is color variations and prints. And here I also want to just throw these rhetorical questions in the audience. When you create color variants for clients, like custom color variations or prints, how many iterations do you go through? How many design iterations do you go through? What does each iteration cost you? And what are the costs of producing each sample? So we had a client, an embroidery factory. I mean, that's a bit a special case. But they told us whenever they design with the client, it takes, I don't know, maybe seven iterations, because they say like, oh, in this embroidery, I want this, please remove this flower. Then they have to create a new sample. Or they say, oh, maybe I want this to be fiery red instead of amber red. And then they have to create a new sample. And each sample costs them 5K. So it's just a very, very expensive process. And of course, it's just a lot of waste, because these samples don't go anywhere. And we talk about sustainability, and at the same time rack up like a huge trash heap of like samples that are being used during these customization and sales processes. And here's stunning for us, because we come from the 3D industry as well. Is that it's super easy. So if you already have, for example, prints digitally, it's really just And I know because I did this yesterday in 2 minutes. It's really just a very quick step from getting like to a print, like to a representation, like here on the right hand side. It took me an additional 2 minutes to create these additional color variants of that print, and they're probably not so pleasing from a color perspective because I'm not a designer, I'm a technical person, but you get what I mean. And why not send this to people instead of then having to produce a garment to sort of do that print, or I don't know, printing prints on a piece of silk, putting them then in your luggage, traveling around the world, going from client to client and selling them. Maybe this is already enough as a representation for your print to sell to a client, or maybe it's the first step, and then I just reduce that. And of course here the one of the biggest points is the reduction of number of faced examples. But not only this, it's also, and I think I'm gonna put up that point later again, but especially for the sales process, where you really literally go from client to client. Just imagine how much wasted is in terms of flying, how much wasted is in terms of gas, how much time that person has to spend. If you have a digital representation, it's just a lot easier exchanging that. So another big advantage, also internally, if you design new color variations, if you design new prints, this will probably give you a better impression of how it's going to look on the final product than just like the 2D Illustrator file that you're creating. And you don't have to go to your own printing press and do that. You don't have to throw on the loom and have like a new color variation woven. You can quickly preview that in 3D if you have digitized materials. And of course, you save fabrics and printing cost. So slowly coming to the end, I just want to reiterate, there's a multitude of different use cases you have for 3D materials, for both suppliers and brands. So once you take that initial effort, it opens the door to a lot more options. And if you take a little glimpse into the future, this is probably just the first step. We have a partner company. They do completely digital clothing. They're called The Fabricant. Maybe you heard about them. And they recently raised 30 million by investors just for digital clothing. So no physical sample ever produced without even that being the goal. And of course, we have areas like VR, AR. You might have heard of the Metaverse. And we are probably going to see a lot more applications of that in the future. So I just want to end this presentation with this very nice comic that somebody showed me on the last event I've been to, because I think that sums it up really well. And with that, I also just want to say it looks all very complicated initially, but again, you don't have to make the transformation overnight, so it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. You can take small steps. You can just look at like, hey, what is the biggest where's the biggest pain point right now? Is it shipment cost for lookbooks? Is it design iterations with clients? Is it something completely else? I don't know. Do our clients think we are not technical, we are not modern enough? You can start there and then slowly iterate from that. And also, if you, we're going to go through a round of questions. If you have any more detailed questions, we're at the end of the hall, just straight through here. Feel free to come by our booth as well.
Martin, I feel I'm semi-confident now in the subject. An hour ago, I thought it was Space Invaders. Now I understand the benefits that you're bringing to the industry. But can I ask the audience to show our appreciation to Martin, please? And I'm saying that to give you all the opportunity. You have a guy who's at the leading edge of digitalization for 3D. Does anyone want to ask a question? To me, that made a lot of sense. Perhaps I just played Space Invaders for too long. Here's your opportunity. You can either ask him questions publicly, or as he described, if you go to the back wall, slightly to the right, you'll be able to find him on a one-to-one basis. But Does anyone want to kick off the questions for today? Because if you don't kick the questions off, I do. Martin, what we're hearing at the moment, we have artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented. What areas do you think we're going to develop more in the near future? Because at the moment we have the three different, they're interrelated. Which one's going to become the more popular in your opinion? Or the more helpful?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have my glass ball with me right now, so it's a very difficult question to ask, to answer, to give. I think with all the new, like you said, with all the new areas coming up, like AR, VR, XR, some R, it's very easy to lose focus on because there are a lot of problems we can fix today as well, like becoming more sustainable, reducing the samples. If somebody was interested, I would probably recommend don't look for the next XR. Don't look how to do the next thing in the 5 years. Check what problems you can solve today. Okay. So not because like I said, there's a lot of things to fix, a lot of stuff to make more efficient and to reduce your carbon footprint. It doesn't have to be like XR right now.
Now, on the back of that, he gets a follow-up question, so I really make him suffer. This industry has greatly benefited from digital color. We can now send a Pantone reference around the world in seconds. What we are missing is tactile information. So I'm talking Haptic technology. I have seen some crude versions. They're much better than they were 2 years ago at the start of lockdown. What are your views? Are we making enough progress in haptic technology, or are we always going to have to find the fabric to see the drape, to see the shine, to contextualize it with our touch rather than a printout?
So, very good question, by the way. I know there's some new technologies who even try to categorize haptic in terms of how it feels. I think also for this one we are seeing some improvements because we have fabric simulations as well. So I just didn't include it because I didn't want to overcomplicate it. But at the end of the day, what we also provide is the draping information of a fabric. So how stretchy is it, how bendy it is, how heavy it is. With that, you can create animations. Basically, for example, create a dress, have somebody's digital avatar swirl around in that, see sort of how that fabric behaves from a physical perspective, see how the reflection shines on the fabric. So does it give you the same as touching it physically? Probably not yet, but it's something close enough that gives you a good impression. And I think this is sort of the same, as I showed at the very beginning, the same analogy with the in retail apparel clothing or the e-commerce. Because if you buy clothing online at Zalando or something, you also cannot touch it. But there's but you still do it. Why do you still do it? Because it's convenient. You easily can sort through all the range. It's just there's even while the touch is not 100% there yet, and I think we might see some new improvements there but that's still I think a few years ahead. You have a lot of different advantages still coming with that. It might make more sense to focus on these instead of just focus on what don't we have then.
It's going to be unfair if I ask him another question. Would anyone oh, we do. Thank you.
Hello. What do you think about 3D scanning by phone? What is providing now a lot of companies? They're developing in this already, I think, 5 years. Is it future or it's because now it's not really accurate? And what do you think about?
You don't mean body scanning? You mean 3D scanning of clothing?
No, I mean body scanning.
Oh, you mean body
scanning to get the right size.
Yeah. I mean, it's done today already. There are a lot of different, there's nearly too many companies who do that already with a multitude of different technologies, from having like 200 cameras around you and scanning you, to just using like a phone and scanning your measurements. I think this is going to, and I mean, think is not the right word, because I think it's already used today in some capacity. As we see the rise in e-commerce, we also see a rise in like stuff being returned, and I think that's like the biggest problem you have with like fashion e-com, that you just have a lot of refunds and return rate, and this is why people put a lot of focus on those. How can we get the size easily from the customer sitting at home in his office, shopping for new clothing? And we already saw some very, I mean, not in this presentation, but we already saw at different events some very interesting solutions that do that. And because the thing is always, if the problem is big enough, you're gonna see a solution come up for that. And I think this is just one of the biggest problems we have with e-com right now. So don't take me up on that, but I guess in the next few years, every e-com shop will have, one way or another, some automated, I don't know if it's just like a recommendation for your size, or if it's really like sizing you up with your webcam automatically. We're gonna see something like that very soon.
Would anyone else like to take on Martin's brain? It's here, it's available. If not, can I ask us all to show our appreciation once again to Martin?
Thanks, Charles.